Hello and welcome to Tournament Poker Project. My name's Jon.
And I am Tain.
And we are two recreational poker players, and this is our journey to get good enough at poker to be able to compete in the World Series of Poker, right, Tain?
Yep, 100%. It's on at the moment.
It's on at the moment. Are you watching it?
I haven't. Yeah, I've stayed updated with a little bit of news, but nothing significant.
You know, I don't think it's actually on Poker Go, which is a bit disappointing. Maybe it's on there now. But I was listening to Tournament Poker Edge podcast, Clayton Fletcher.
Ooh, right, yeah.
I listen to him like every week, every Friday. He puts a new one on there, and he had a really bad year in the World Series last year. This year, he made his first final table.
Oh, nice!
How cool is that? So I think he came fifth. Spoiler alert! But it was in a pot limit Omaha game because he plays a few different games. But I was really chuffed for him. I thought it's so nice to be listening to someone for that amount of time, and then they've actually done well enough to get to a final table. He deserves it, man. He's good. He's good.
Yeah, no, I've listened to him quite a lot. I remember listening through his bad time last year. Just prepping out a lot, and
he's quite an aggressive player, isn't he? I think like quite loose aggressive, and you're going to have a bit more variance, I think. So you're going to have stints of quite bad luck, and then suddenly a final table. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, the other one I'm waiting for him is to get one of these mystery bounties. He keeps going on and on about.
Yeah, God, he loves a mystery bounty.
Yeah,
Clayton Fletcher, if you're listening, you love a mystery bounty.
We're rooting for you, though, man.
We're rooting for you. Good luck, man. And thank you for all the learnings. It's been you were kind of there at the start of things, so yeah, thanks very much.
Yes.
So look, just a caveat, we're not professional poker players, far from it. We're kind of hoping to get to a good level at some point. This is us going to be reading hands, talking a bit of strategy, but obviously we know that we're not, got everything completely mastered. So if you do kind of listen in and you've got any comments to make or any feedback, we'd love to hear it. Please post it in the chat. So let's jump straight in, shall we, Tain? I've got a hand here. This is from a sit and go, 9-handed, and there are 6 players left at the table. It's been going pretty quick. I think the first 3 knockouts were pretty quick. The blinds are still just 40 and 80. And then there's a little ante as well. So the pot before any voluntary betting is at 168. We are on the big blind in this hand, and we get a fold from under the gun. And then under the gun +1, which is also the the hijack position, because it's only 6-handed now, does a min raise to 160. And this villain is also near to chip leader, second chip leader. So he's on 4,200 odd. We are in the big blind with ace, queen suited, offsuit, sorry, ace of clubs, queen of clubs. And everyone folds around to us. So we've got this min raise. It's 80 more in the pot to call, and we'd be going heads up to a flop. What are your thoughts here?
The min raise from early position is fairly standard. It could be bigger, but it's well within 2 to 5 times range capacity. So I'm not going to read anything into the range, the bet size. Opening from that position puts him fairly limited, although being 6-handed does increase the capacity to raise. So what we're looking at, 15% range at this point, 15 to 20%. Everything's a bit standard. You've got a completely uncapped range. So I am looking at it. So it's certainly a call. There's opportunities to free bet, and being ace queen off but out of position, one of my gut feelings is that it's the kind of hand I'm not so keen to play out of position, because when you haven't hit, you kind of want the ace and the queen to be doing something with the flop, maybe blocking the club flush or blocking some other lower Broadway straights, things like that, where you can't do that out of position as anywhere near as well. So I'm not opposed to a call, but a free bet in this position is quite balanced as well. I think you need to be free betting some of your stronger ace X so that you can also free bet some of your lower suited connectors in the same way. It kind of disguises your hand strength quite a bit.
I agree. I like a three bet here. I think it gives us a bit more information about his hand as well. If you four bets, and you could well be behind, or probably are. I don't know. I don't even know if that's the right way to think about it. If someone four bets you with six handed, you might just think you're trying it and re-raise you with ace 10 suited. I don't know, but it would likely give us a bit more confidence with the type of holding he's got.
Yeah,
so yeah, I like a three bet.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, if you free bet and he four bets, I don't mind that as a fold. If they're doing that with a real wide range of cards, as much as you'd probably have to give up a bit more chips than you'd like to have in this position, they're obviously playing quite strong, quite aggressive, throwing a lot of chips out there, and you'll be able to see that in subsequent hands anyway. So you'll be able to adjust in future. This hand won't be in isolation. You won't make that mistake again. You'll be able to play differently, or five bet is four bet, something like that. But also, I do like the idea that just calling the free bet does put a cap on his range, and it keeps yours completely uncapped.
Mm-hmm.
There's quite a benefit out of position to having that essentially infinite range.
Okay, so we like a raise. So hero here, which was me, opts to just flat call. So we just defend with a call on the big blind with ace queen offsuit. And the flop comes jack of hearts, two of clubs, ace of diamonds. So we hit top pair. Board is rainbow. It's quite disconnected. Obviously the ace and the jack do connect if he's got something like king queen, king 10, queen 10, which he could have. I think he could have any of those hands at a six-handed table that's being played quite loose. I think he could have any of those hands. I think he has got some jacks in his range. I think he's got an aces in his range as well. Okay, so yeah, we've hit top pair. We've got a really decent kicker. Actions on us. What are your thoughts?
This is part of what I've been trying to get better at lately and trying to change my behaviour. So I think because you haven't opted to free bet, you have capped your range to some degree. So you now don't really have the best nuts. So the chances of you having aces is pretty slim. The chances of ace jack, well, it's fairly reasonable, but ace jack suited, you'd have to be playing to the club for that to make any difference. But because your range is massive at the moment and you haven't had the opportunity to fold away any of your crap, the villain, the under the gun player +1, does have the nuts advantage and probably has the range advantage with an ace and the jack out there. They're more likely to have aces and jacks. You've probably got a pair of twos in your range. There's a slight slim chance you got jack 2. You've certainly got ace 2 in your range.
Yeah, maybe not jack 2, but possibly, I guess, yeah. But definitely ace 2.
Yeah, I mean the min raise, it was early position, so you should be tightening up maybe a little more. But I don't think there's anything wrong with a jack 2 suited, especially if it's a diamond. You've got your backdoor there as well. That'd be a good one to continue with it, calling a raise. But at the moment, because they do have a much wider range of, they've got a much narrower range of hands, but that narrow range is much stronger on this board. I think the right move is to check and allow them to bet.
What do you mean they've got a much narrower range?
So just the fact that they raised under the gun, so they're not going to be doing that with jack 2. Whereas a big blind defense feasibly could just call with jack 2 suited. So their range is only 15%, probably starting at something like ace 10 suited, ace jack off, and then that kind of arrow into the corner, probably playing suited broadways down to king jack suited, maybe pushing king queen off.
Sure. in that respect, then, I mean, this board favours his range based on the betting, but I guess based on our exact holding, maybe we're quite disguised then, because this is a hand we could have free bet quite easily. He's got to be thinking he's got the range advantage here, but we know from looking at our cards, actually, our exact holding is doing pretty well. This is like the top end of our range here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's if you raise here and he calls, he's still got every single hand that's he had to start with. He's probably going to be calling with his bluffs because they've probably got straight scan for him. They might have flushes in there, for combo draws and stuff. So his range doesn't really change. You don't get him to define what he's got, and you don't really get any additional information on whether ace queen is miles ahead or miles behind. Like, I'm not sure I would put jacks in your calling range from the big blind. You could do, but I also think that's more of a free betting hand. I mean, I think that's definitely a free betting hand because I don't like playing with jacks. I think it gets too tricky, especially out of position, unless you hit a jack. So a free bet getting folds is actually a much more desirable outcome than a call hoping for a 10 lower board or something. So I don't know if betting here will achieve much. I don't think we want to be building a pot too much when a lot of our range is missing that board anyway.
Okay, I would disagree. I think we've got a good, strong hand here, and we just got to build this pot. I feel like this pot, I mean, he could have ace king, but he could also have ace queen. He could have ace 10. I think he could have ace 9, ace 8. I think he could have king queen, king 10, queen 10. Hell, I think he could have all of the suited connectors, 9, 10, 8, 9, even like 6, 7.
Well,
I think his range is pretty big, and we've hit this board hard here, right?
Well, to look at it from a different perspective, let's assume that the villain knows that your big blind calling range is massive, but they also know that your big blind's donk bet range is nowhere near that. The fact that he was the lead aggressor, I think if you've got an exceptionally strong hand, you just let them continue that aggression.
Definitely. Oh yeah, I'm checking here all day long, I would say.
Okay, I was going to say, so leading out, yeah. Oh, gotcha. So I was going to say, leading out, you're just getting worse hands to fold and better hands to call.
Oh, like, sorry, yeah. No, I know. So, we're in agreement. We want him to. He's got to think he's ahead here, or at least he's got to know his range is ahead of our just flat call with on the big blind. So well, let's let him do the betting. We've not got to worry. I think it's not a case of worrying if we are ahead, more that right, how do we get all the chips in the pot? that's all I've got in my head. How do we get this pot maxed out?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not what I chose to do. I didn't check on the day. I did bet roughly a third of the pot, or just over. I bet 160 into the 408 pot.
So yeah, and I think I established that I didn't think that was the right move, and I'm pretty confident that I wouldn't want to have done that. However, just before we announce the follow-up action, is this one of them positions where a re-raise here is actually better than a call? What hands are they just calling a donk bet? Like, let's assume that the villain understands that they were the pre-flop aggressor. So for you to now be aggressing at them is not normal. And there's not an awful lot of hands that you'd feel confident enough to be doing that. So I feel that they'd know that you haven't got the nuts, because you'd just be you're not going to be getting value by inducing folds from their hands that have missed. If they're playing with king queen and they're not feeling lucky with the straights, if they're playing a pair of tens, they're folding here because you've donked into them. And all of a sudden them tens had bluff value, probably on two streets maybe. depending on your check. If you passively check call. So a call from them can suddenly now become a slow play, and it can actually, you've now turned into the aggressor. So they know they've got both range advantage. They could both have hit and now have draws. And okay, if you're going to bet at me, let's just call massive overbet on the river.
It's like I've taken the lead, which I don't want to say it's polarised my range, because I don't think it's really done that. The bet's not really big enough to say that I've polarised my range. I'm either bluffing, or maybe it does. Maybe this bet says either. This bet, actually, looking at it objectively, the bet from me here in a hero position looks a little bit scared. Looks a little bit like, oh, that's your range. I'm just going to bet a bit, see if I can steal it now, and see what happens. But then he's responded by just a flat call. So what does that say? He probably hasn't got to worry too much about letting me see the turn card and complete a straight. I mean, there are some straights that might complete, like some gut shots, but there's no flush draws on the board apart from obviously the back door, but that's always on any board.
But I think he's folded most of his bad bluffs at this point, and that's not overly desirable if your intention is to get value. You kind of want all of them bluffs in his range. You want him to continue with his straight draw, ideally for 2 streets, so that by the river, if that's now missed, which you are blocking as well, which is also helpful, and you're also blocking the ace backdoor club draw, which is helpful. So you kind of need him to have as many of them bluffs in his hands as he can, if value is where you think you're at this point. If you don't think you're at value, or you're at the indifference point where your hand could be way ahead, could be way behind, it's kind of a either or, then maybe it doesn't matter as much. But the fact he's just called worries me, because it's just got rid of a lot of his bluffs. It's not a huge amount for him to call, so he can feasibly be doing that.
Do you think it's got rid of his bluffs though? If his bluffs are things like gut shot straight draws, I've only put in 160. We're still pretty deep stacked. I think if in villain shoes, faced with a 160 bet, if I had 4 cards to a straight, I might consider calling because of the expected, the implied odds. I might think, I'll call it now with just king high. I've got king queen, just got to hit a 10, and I might get a load of chips. I might consider it, maybe not, but in the moment, I would possibly consider that.
It's more in terms of the value you're likely to realise, because he's not going to do that on the river if he's missed. So you're missing the big bet, the big value when the pot's at its biggest, unless he's someone who's just going to wildly bet the river anyway, which you can't overly rely on, but it's great when it happens. Plus, they're only ever going to call the small bets, whereas they're more likely, especially if they are bluffing. So if you check to him and he's got king queen, for instance, I'd expect his bet to be more than 160, and you'll be able to call for the exact same outcome onto the turn, but with the pot now inflated. And then that means that your next bet or his next bet has to be bigger to be a big percentage of the pot. So you're building a much bigger pot, and they're the aggressor, so they feel like they're in control of that, even though you've actually inadvertently given them the control to put the noose around their own neck.
Definitely. I so should have checked it over to him and let him continue to bet into this. I mean, he's called it, so he's got something. It's difficult to range him exactly. He could, like I say, he could just be calling a gut shot. He could be calling a weaker ace. I feel like if he had ace king, he might be betting, sort of re-raising this, or sort of raising it over the top of my 160 to try and get a feel for where he's at. He might put ace jack in my range. He might put ace 2 in my range, pairs of 2s, like you say. And he might be like, oh, he's bet. I'm going to bet, 3x, 4x. And then if he flat calls me, then, he might have a bit of understanding where I'm at.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel that they're the type of player that if they're sitting there with aces, jacks, or ace jack, will want to charge you for a straight draw? Would they want to free bet you? Not sorry, free bet.
Honestly, I don't remember that. I don't remember. I don't remember the hand I played last night.
Because I did think them calling behind for a big part of lower level tournament, at least, kind of does get rid of a few of their very best hands. They'd want to charge you, or they'd get excited. Oh, you bet. Let's re-raise you, try to get all the chips in now, so I don't have to
it
have a
doesn't
difficult
scream.
decision
It doesn't
later.
scream strength, does it? It's kind of. I don't think he's sitting there with a set. Ace King, I find it hard to believe he would just flat call. But then he could be slow. He could be like, oh great, this donk started betting into me. I'm going to slow play my 2-pair or my set now. So I think I've messed up here. I should have just let him carry on the betting, carry on being the aggressor. He'd have the polarised ranged. I would have the condensed range, and that's the way it should have gone. That would have been better.
Oh, is it not the other way around?
What's that?
If you'd have checked, your range wouldn't. Well, if you'd have just checked in the first place, I don't think your range would have been condensed. I think your range would have been as big as it was when you first opened.
No, I just mean it's not polarized, not
right.
condensed.
Gotcha.
It's smaller. Sorry, like I've been
reading
linear,
I think.
I've been reading Andrew Brokers' book about condensed and condensed and polarized ranges, but I'm going off a bit half-cocked talking about that because I'm still not completely got my head around it. But yeah, no, I just mean when you're the one doing the check-in and calling, you're generally got the condensed range, as in the range that's hit kind of middle in pairs, or hands that want to see a showdown that aren't necessarily so confident they want to get value, versus a polarized range which has not really got any of those hands in, but has got all the really strong things like sets, 2-pair, and then also bluffs. So like polarized as in you've really got it, or you're bluffing. Versus, and it's generally the person who's aggressor, the person who's kind of leading the bets on each street is the one with the polarized range, and the one who's calling has got the condensed range.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. That if the villain's got, let's just say they've got King Jack or Ace 5, Ace 6, something that's not, it's literally playing the card that they've hit and not too much else. I mean, the King's probably actually playing quite a lot there, but as certainly Ace 6, Ace 7s, I don't think this is a position to just call in, unless they're really going for that bluff catcher almost.
What you mean? Sure. What? It's not a position the villain should just call.
Sorry, yeah, I should say, yeah, the under the gun player, I can't see any benefit of them just calling if they've got ace rag. What are they playing for? What are they playing ace rag for? 2-pair or better. That you can't play a hand hoping to hit 2-pair or better.
No, but this is what I mean. If he starts if we've now donk bet and we've just suddenly taken the lead, we're kind of now like, right, we've got the polarized range now. We're either bluffing or we've got a really good hand. So that's when he could start calling with weaker aces, because that would be his condensed range. It's not strong enough to bet over the top, but he probably, he's got an ace. He's got a pair of aces now. He wants to see the river, wants to see the showdown.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I get that. Cool. All right.
Okay. So like I say, we bet there, just 160, villain called, and the turn comes the 4 of diamonds. So we're sitting with ace queen offsuit in the hole, and the board is jack of hearts, 2 of clubs, ace of diamonds, 4 of diamonds. What are your thoughts? Pot's at 728. We've got 3,300 behind. The villain's on 4,000 chip stack.
Cool. Apart from a weak ace X that's either now just turned a wheel draw, or they may have hit 2-pair with the ace 4. The main thing that highlights to me is the diamonds, where I think a lot of their hands were ace X. That was the majority of their hands. And the ace diamond being out there blocks any of the flush draws that would now be, 4 cards to a flush.
Okay.
It's a little bit more enticing. So the only hands that they're now in a position to really be playing that flush draw are King Queen, King Jack, Queen Jack, Jacks if they've got the Jack of Diamonds. No, that wouldn't make a difference. Excuse me. Possibly Jack 10. That's certainly in the range of weaker players under the gun opening. But I don't think the flush is as worrisome for what their range should be. So it's not something to ignore, but I'm also not too concerned. For instance, if you was looking to get further value, I don't think a small bet that would allow a flush draw to easily call is going to be too much of an issue. I think enough of their so enough of their range won't have a flush in anyway. So it doesn't matter that the few hands are getting the odds to call, because most of the hands there is no odds because the flush means nothing.
Yeah, they've not got it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I like that. Okay. So we bet on the flop and got called. Do we bet again here? Do we carry on now that we've took the lead? Do we sort of?
Yeah, I feel
playing for value.
Now you've taken the lead and you're the aggressor, and essentially you may have capped the villains very top of their range, and that 4 now fits into a lot more of the big blind defenses. If you was taking a wild stab with a pair of 4s, which I don't think you should have, but let's just say you did, so you've now got sets in there. Ace 4 is much more a bigger part of your range than it is the villains. So now taking the lead, I feel that you've got a few more of the nutty hands, plus continuing the aggression to get value. If the villain is going to be just flat calling each time, that's the way to go. If you check to them, it feels as though the 4 was enough of a brick, that they're just going to check behind. So it's not now the opportunity to get value. I feel that now you've taken the lead, you need to continue that. Small bets maybe, but okay. You've got to do that. There's too much risk of a check behind, and any value you could have had is now been ruined. And if they were on any kind of draw, well, whoop-de-hoo, there's a lot of cards out there that you're now really actually worried about. And any 3, any 5, any 10, Queen, King, even a 9. Is that really too much of a worry? Probably not, actually. But yeah, there's a lot.
It's interesting you say that we've got more Ace 4. Like we've got more chance of having Ace 4 in our hand, and I think that was true pre-flop. But I think once we donk bet the flop, I think that takes a hand like Ace 4 out of our range, or at least like lessens the chance of it being in there. And the reason I think that is because if we had an ace, but it was a bad kicker like a 4 on that board, and we had the hijack position there opens, I'd be worried that we've not quite got the best hand. But I want to see a showdown because we do have the ace, and he might not even have one. But if he has got one, and he's got a lot of aces in his opening range, he's probably got a better one. So it's one of those hands, I would say, Ace 4, where I would be much less likely to donk bet because I want to see the showdown and I want to get there cheaply, really. I just want to let him do the leading. But so the fact I donk bet, I think takes the Ace 4s a bit more out of my range. And seeing as he just flat called, he's then got that condensed range where the villain I'm talking about now, on the flop, when he just flat calls, he could well do that with Ace 4. He opened maybe a bit wide, but the table's playing loose pre-flop with Ace 4. He's called the flop bet because he's suddenly worried about being outkicked. And I think he could well do that with Ace 4.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Go on, sorry.
I was just going to say, so obviously I could have donk bet with Ace 4, but I think that would have been even less correct than donk betting with Ace Queen that I did do. If that makes sense.
No, sure. I mean, it depends what your ambition is with ace four in that moment. So I do completely understand wanting to get to showdown because it's a weak ace, but you're also giving the person in position every opportunity to either bluff you or make you pay anyway. It's a really difficult position to realize value. You kind of need position to be getting that value. So maybe even a blocker bet in that position is where you're at, but blocker bets on the flop is a bit too early for that kind of thing.
Like a defensive bet, do you mean? Like,
yeah,
I'm betting an amount that I'd be happy to call in the hope that he doesn't bet a bigger amount if I check.
Yeah, I don't think enough of his range is going to re-raise me, so I'm going to bet that amount now to kind of ensure he doesn't bet twice that as their opening bet. But I just think that maybe the sizing of the bet weren't strong enough. But I think you certainly could be leading with ace four in that position, but it is with the intention of folds. You're looking to get folds from his queen jack or jack 10 or pair of tens, pair of nines, that then when you hit there and then, because it's not particularly strong ace. That was it. You only got called, so your hand don't define more than that. It does depend on where you want to see your value. So why wait till the river when your hand's almost certainly not going to improve? If you've got ace four, I mean, well, there's a backdoor straight, but you're not going to be playing the best flush draw.
But are you saying then that if I bet the flop with ace four, it would be am I trying to get worse hands to stay in, i.e., is it a value bet, or am I trying to get better aces to fold, i.e., is it a bluff? I'm not clear what do you mean? So ace four betting the flop, ace high flop. I wouldn't want jack 10 to fold. I want that to stay in, right?
Yeah, but that might still stay in with that bet. So you will still get. It's kind of it kind of does both, because you're going to stop hands realizing value. It's not necessarily just am I going to get value or am I going to get folds for that? There are a lot of hands which can and will outdraw you. If you can win the pot here, that's the best opportunity. That's the best chance you've got of realizing your equity. Not necessarily, all right, I want to get better hands to fold. Well, the truth is, worse hands will get better, especially against the range that you're playing against. Your hand actually, instead of looking at it as exact hands, at this moment in time on that board, their range has far better equity. So if you can get folds from their range and from a big part of their range that might have missed, then is that not a better outcome than giving them two more streets to realise value? Like I don't think there is thin value to be had necessarily, and this might be where I'm making mistakes, that I don't go for that thin value.
Possibly not. I just think this is where, I've got a different way of thinking about it to you, definitely though, and I don't know who's right or wrong as such, but I would, whenever I'm betting, I'm either bluffing to get better hands to fold. In this case, if I was betting with ace four on the flop, it would be to get ace five, ace six, ace seven, ace eight even to fold, which would probably be a struggle considering we only flat called on the big blind. But anything that's behind me, I'd want them to come along. The exception to that is if there was, if they had like two cards to a flush and they had quite a big chance of improving, more so than like hitting a second card and getting two pair, then I'd bet a bigger amount, and that might be to make them pay, but I'd still want them to come along. It would just be to make them get the wrong odds to make the call profitably, if that makes sense.
Sure. But then that kind of rings true that ace four is massively within your range as the big blind at this point in time, because you certainly will start getting calls from queen jack and jack tens easily. You'll get calls from king queens. You'll get calls from probably a pair of pair of queens, pair of kings might even call you in this position. So you should be leading, especially leading this turn with ace four that's now hit two pair.
Maybe so. Maybe.
Yeah.
I worry that I would say though that if you were betting this flop with ace four, you'd be betting for quite thin value, because there's other aces, better aces in his range, and yes, there are also like you say, queen jack, king jack, 10 jack.
Well, what other hands would you be doing this range with? What are you balancing it with? So when they've made that call behind, are they doing that because you've got both exceptionally weak hands and exceptionally strong hands? So a call is optimal because if they're way ahead, you're going to fold, and if they're way behind, you're going to call or free bet. Or is it that you're now playing what they consider a really condensed range? So just a call is of irrelevance because they've got a better hand than your condensed range. If they're playing a pair of jacks, for instance, it's in their favour for you to keep every single one of your bluffs in there because they're not likely to improve.
Yeah, no, exactly. So that we've kind of polarised in a way. We've polarised. We've got an exceptionally strong hand or a bluff, but I don't feel like ace four is exceptionally strong, and it's definitely not a bluff because we've got a top pair. So I feel like betting ace four on the flop would be a mistake, because it feels to me like that's part of a condensed range, a hand within a condensed range, a hand that wants to see the showdown.
It's more where that fits in with your wider range. It's not so much that exact ace four. Is ace four, let's say ace four, I don't know, ace four of clubs. Is that part of your big blind calling range? And therefore, would you then use ace four in the same way you'd do aces, where you're betting in? Would you do that with ace queen? As in, so to put it another way, what other hands are you going to lead the flop with that are similar to ace queen or different to ace queen? What kind of bluffs are you leading the flop with?
I would say I probably shouldn't donk bet there overall, but seeing as we did, I would say hands that would donk bet that flop would be king queen, king 10, queen 10, so all the gut shots. Maybe even hands that you're just not going to call any bet with, that just want to take a pop, see if they can steal it. So that's tons of hands, like things that are missed entirely. Like no, that would definitely, I would definitely check that. I would want to see a showdown, or at least like entertain it for a bit. Maybe call like a bet from the villain, and then if he goes big, then consider folding it. But things like 9-10. Well, that's got the backdoor straight. 6-7, 6-7 suited or unsuited. Just loads of hands that completely missed. I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but I think I would donk bet that with just a load of hands that I know that are never calling any bet. Literally donk bet with the intention of folding to any raise or just giving up on the turn.
So is ace queen the best hand within that donk range? Is that the strongest hand that is balancing the complete bluffs? So when
ace queen, ace king, ace jack for two pair, ace two for two pair.
You'd lead them out with the donk.
I'd lead them with the donk. Possibly so, yeah. Like I say, I think the donk bet is polarised in my range, so I've either got really strong hands or complete bluffs.
But you wouldn't want to leave, because the villain has range advantage at that point. Would you not want to lead them in the betting? Because even with the stronger part of your hands, you want to be getting value from the lead aggressor. Like what we were saying earlier, if they're the opening aggressor.
Yeah.
you're
But
getting
then,
most of their worst hands to fold, and it becomes a bit more of a difficult decision. So you could be sitting there with a pair of jacks, or even with ace jack, and you're pretty certain that you're
I think
good.
it's a tricky question because I shouldn't have donk bet it anyway.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have done it. It should have just been a check to the aggressor, because if I did have ace jack or ace two for two pair, it would have been perfect to just disguise it with I'm checking to you, you're the aggressor, let him see bet, flat call it, make it look like I've got, a shoddy ace or jack 10, queen jack, it was. I think the donk bet was wrong anyway, which makes that
Sure.
question difficult because it shouldn't have been. It shouldn't have been donk bet with ace queen, and I did.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm kind of really getting at in a backwards way, because I haven't properly formulated it in my mind. In that, if you're the kind of player that made a donk bet because you've hit your ace, I don't think the queen is significant enough to eliminate a four. Does that make sense? Like, I think that you would be making that bet, or at least the villain should be looking at your range, thinking ace four is more in their range, because you would be defending the big blinds with all of the ace four off. Whereas I would be very surprised if they were opening with ace four off. Well, not very surprised, but ace four off shouldn't be a big part of their opening under the gun range, whereas it's a massive part of calling from the big blinds. And if you're going to donk bet anyway, I don't know why ace queen would be significantly better than ace four. Like, if the ace is winning, the ace is winning. If you're worried about them having ace X big better than yours, then anything that comes out on the flop that you haven't hit is just as scary. So the next card, if it's a king or another jack or a 10 or an 8 or you know what I mean, like, they could hit two pair off any of them. So the queen's irrelevant at that point anyway. If they're calling you with ace X, what's stopping them from having any two pair on following streets? So if you're going to donk bet with the ace, I think it's ace X as a random. But that's just my feelings. It's more that because it was donk bet, I feel that the ace four is still a bigger part of your range. You've got the ace of clubs, so that's it's out of it now anyway. The ace of four is out there, so there's no diamond draw. At the very least, I think getting back to where we're at in the hands, I think you've now got a lot more of the range advantage. I do think you've got a few more two pairs. I think a pair of fours could be in your range as well. So all of a sudden,
so with that in mind, then what are you thinking here? What would be your action?
I still think you're playing a condensed range. I think the very best and very worst of your hands have been eliminated to some degree. So small bet, looking for thin value.
Value, okay. And what sort of hands would you say we're hoping to get a call from?
Same hands as before that you mentioned. So all of the gut shots, I think, would still stay there, especially now the pot's a bit bigger. Quite a lot of Jack X.
Yeah,
would definitely call. Tens, I think, if they've called the first bet, I think I'd certainly call there.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. Queens and kings. Sometimes they will call one bet and then I don't know what they expect to see on the next street, but get scared. But the theory is, if you called one, why would you not call two?
Exactly. Well, especially when it's a brick like a four. So so bearing in mind that he could have a lot of Jack X or weaker aces, what bet size are you thinking here? So the pot's at 728. What bet size is going to keep in those Jack X and worse aces?
250, somewhere around there. 250, 300.
Yeah. So about a third pot, yeah. Okay, let's have a look. What did? All right. I wasn't too far off for that. I bet 204 into the 728, so somewhere between a quarter and a third pot. And the villain now repops it to 772. So coming up to 4x there, 4x bet. So what's that? 3.5, 3 3/4 x repop. What are you thinking now?
So running back through the action, they raised from under the gun. There's a possibility they did that with all the strongest of their hands. The bet sizing didn't matter. They've just called behind because it was a dunk bet. They've now got possibly a slight advantage to be balancing their bad hands with their good hands. So that if they're going to call with their gut shots, it's not the worst thing to call with their, pocket aces, pocket jacks as well, because they're really nicely hidden. So if the gut shot misses and you take the lead thinking, well, they've missed their draw, and they suddenly pop up with set of aces, you're getting a lot of chips from that way. So at the moment, they do still have the best of their sets. Would they be doing this with their raggy aces or even their ace kings? Would they not be free betting your bet? Re-raising your bet on the flop? Why would you not? There's not many draws out there to protect from. Would they consider ace king hitting the ace as the nuts? I mean, obviously we know it isn't, but would they consider, like, for instance, if you did a wild shove, I think they would be calling that with ace king on the flop, at which point I think they'd be calling that with ace 10 on the flop. That's the thing. Some people hit that ace and they kind of do play it as the nuts. But at this level, six-handed, sit and go, low stakes. So I do feel that they could be doing this maneuver with a lot of ace X, but it's less likely.
Yeah.
I certainly feel they'd be doing this with their gut shots again, as almost like.
Imagine if you had a hand like king queen of diamonds here, or king 10 of diamonds here. They've still got that gut shot straight, but they've also got the nut flush draw as well.
Yeah, I mean, for that maneuver, king jack of diamonds would be delicious. Like they've got the pair and a flush. There's a lot they could be drawing. Yeah, they've got any king, any jack, any diamond. So yeah, there are a lot of hands that this is a good re-raise with, but I also feel that the number of bluffs that they could do that with, or the number of weaker aces that they could be doing that with, makes this an easy call. Certainly not a free bet. And we're now in a position where you've just got an ace, and we're getting near the river, so it's not exactly the strongest hand. And now all of a sudden the pot is getting pretty loaded. I would imagine that, but yeah, I personally feel that they would make this move with a lot of their bluffs. So their range is pretty good at the moment. I think it's quite polarised at this point.
Yeah, they're polarised, haven't they? By re-raising. Polarised, definitely. So I'm feeling that a call is right here, yeah?
Yes. Yeah, I feel it is. Specifically with this hand, yeah.
Okay, well, hero, which is me, does call. And we go to the river. The pot is now at 2,272. And we have just over that behind, 2,500 behind. Villain has 3,200. And the river comes 9 of clubs for a final board of jack of hearts, 2 of clubs, ace of diamonds, 4 of diamonds, 9 of clubs. So the flush didn't get there. The straight did not get there. We have top pair with a queen kicker. Action is on us. What's your thoughts?
Check, 100%.
Just check it. Okay.
Yeah, I feel that the number of times they're beating you are probably enough that I'd pay it off. It's exactly what you said. If you raise him at all here, you're only getting called by a better hand. Well, there are a few hands that might call you. I do feel that some players are bad enough that they'll call you with ace X. But the truth is that you want them to keep their bluffs. And I feel that they've got a lot that they might see that last check as complete weakness. And that will shove. Even just, No, just to check. I mean,
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think you're right. We want them to bluff. We want them to bluff. And obviously, they still might have us beaten, but we can call a bet, and it'll be the same as them calling our bet if they're ahead. But this way, at least, if they did miss one of their draws, we've got that extra bet on the end, and we can call that off with our. Well, it seems crazy to say it, but this almost this bluff catcher by this point, although it's surely too strong to be classed as a bluff catcher. It's confusing. It was messed up with my bet on the flop, so it's become a very difficult hand to have clarity on of kind of where we're classing it.
Is there any value in continuing the small bet size that you've done, where if you just check, the opportunity for them to win the hand is easy because they can just check? Is that they've got no other option at that point? For them to just check behind is the same as them mucking what they know is a losing hand if they're not going to bet. Whereas if you put in what might be a tiny silly bet, say 300 chips, 400 chips, it will put the little doubt of weakness in their mind that if they were going to bluff that, they'd still bluff it because they look at the weak bet that you've put in and they realise that they can come over the top. But then you're now saying to them, there's no chance you can win this hand without investing even more money. Now you've missed your flop. Your choices are bluff or fold. And, there's quite a lot of chips in there that's above 3 of the players' stacks that's in the middle. Are you going to give that up very easily?
Are we saying if we bet a small amount though, are we hoping to get called by his bluffs? Probably not.
It's more, would it induce more? It's not.
Would it induce a bluff more? Okay, yeah, maybe.
Is it more likely to induce a bluff? And I might be completely wrong. I'm very much speculating about how I felt in the position of the villain, where I've missed my draws. That checking behind is a free thing. It's easy to do. So if I've missed my draw, you check to me, and it's like, oh well, if you check to me, there's no point bluffing because I've got a crap hand anyway. So let's just hope to hell that my king high is going to win somehow.
Okay.
And that's easy, just check. Whereas if you put a little bet in, I'm never going to just call that with king high or even queen high. So I might still fold, which it wouldn't have made any difference if I fold because you were always going to win. But I might think, I'm not going to call because I'm going to lose. I'm actually going to bet because that's the only opportunity I've got of winning now, because I can't win by calling because I've got, queen high. But if I bet, and they've shown they're pretty weak by trying to push me off the hand for, 1/10 of the pot. Does that make sense?
But you know what? I get your thinking, and I was like agreeing in my head, and then I thought, well, hang on though. If I was villain and I was faced with a small bet on the river, that would look like the hero's trying to get value. And actually, sometimes those smaller bets kind of shout strength a bit more than they do. He's weak because he only bet a small amount. It's like the hero wants a call, so he's only going to bet a quarter pot or whatever. And that can make it look quite strong. And it might actually deter a bluff. It might not, but I feel like it might actually have more chance of deterring a bluff than inducing one.
It's more, the people that are folding in that position, I feel, would always be folding. If they're worried that your bet looks enticing, I don't think they were bluffing anyway. I feel that they were always going to take a free check. If a tiny little 300 bet stops you from bluffing, then a free check behind is, I feel that wouldn't make any difference. I understand what you're saying, that it might look as though you're trying to get every last little drip of value by betting as tiny as possible. But that doesn't change the bluff. That only changes what might be a call. So, for instance, if you bet a tiny bet, you bet something silly, 400 chips into this pot, you might get a call from Jack 10, who thinks, what the heck, I've got a Jack. So there is a bit of value there anyway.
Okay.
And the Jack 10's 100% checking behind at this point. But
I struggle to believe that the Jack 10 here would have re-raised the turn like he did. I think he would have just. What was he trying to be
diamonds? Jack 10 diamonds definitely would be betting in that position in that way.
I wouldn't be. I would never. I would. Because I'd be like, I've got showdown value, and I might even hit my flush for an even stronger.
Well, you are always worried you've only got second pair, essentially no kicker. So winning the hand there with a re-raise gets you good value, as well as having equity in that last turn card, because you can still draw to another jack, a 10 or a diamond.
So betting with the jack, hoping to take the pot down and get someone with an ace off of their ace.
Possibly.
Okay, maybe. I can't see that. I think if he thought, I've got a pair of jacks and someone's got an ace, I want to get them off of it. Like, I don't know. I think he'd struggle. I think he'd struggle to be getting someone off of an ace by that point. Especially if you've got this flush draw as well. Would you want to? You'd probably just be like, oh, I've got showdown value. Let's just call that turn bet of 200 or whatever I did, 204.
Sure.
But yeah, okay.
No, right, then. So I do see what you're saying. I do agree.
All right. And what do you think then? Are we betting this river?
Essentially, I feel that the check is the right move.
Yeah.
I feel that their check raise means that if you feel you've still got the best hands, then let them be aggressive into you. If you don't feel that you've got the best hands, then what would a raise here get fold from that beats you? Very little.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think we just need to check it down. Like, my betting line has been pretty bonkers. So I think he's I'm starting to feel like he's really strong, if I'm honest. We don't bet him. He just flat called the flop. And then when there was that risk of a flush, because the second diamond hit on the turn, that's when he raised big and started maybe to try to protect against it, which he probably didn't really need to do. It was unlikely I would have backdoor diamonds exactly in that spot, but that's possibly what he was thinking. So I'm starting to worry he's really strong here. Let's see what Hero does. So I do check.
Just to be clear, so you're saying on the turn he wouldn't be making that check raise with a combo draw per se, where he's got a pair and a flush draw, for instance, like a king jack of diamonds. So we're eliminating any semi bluffs, essentially. Should we call them that?
I don't,
because they'd go for showdown value.
Yeah,
so
I think
it's
so.
either pure bluffs or. Right, gotcha.
I think so. I mean, I'm not 100% certain. I just feel like, yes, you've got the flush draw, which makes it a semi bluff, but the fact you've got second pair with a good kicker turns it into a hand that wants to see a showdown, and that should probably outweigh turning it into a bluff that wants to get people off their hand.
Yeah, no, of course, because that's really important at this stage, because what I was saying about doing this, a small bet might get calls from Jack X or something, is irrelevant, because that wouldn't have got to this stage. Yeah, no, cool, I agree. Cool. So checking here was 100% the right move.
I think so. Although Villain has now given us a pretty tough decision on the river, with the pot standing at 2,272. Villain bets, what is that? Three-quarter pot, just under 1,500 chips, which would be most of the rest of our stack, leaving us just with 1,000. We'd be short stack at the table with just 1,000 chips left, and the M value was 1,600 odds, so we'd have somewhere in the region of like 6 or 7 M. We'd suddenly be in almost a push fold, or at least a small stack strategy play, which would be a real shame because we were doing pretty well before that. So he's put us in a really tough spot. To call this now, we'd be kind of crippling our stack.
So what I'm trying to consider is, what is the Villain achieving with their bet size? As in, what hand have they got? Like, let's just say they're doing it with one of their misdraws. They did this with King Queen of diamonds. So they've missed the balls. What are they hoping a 3/4 size bet is now folding that you've got to this stage with?
Yeah, I know. This is it. But I kind of, what we need to remember is we checked because we wanted to keep his bluffs in. This could well be one of his bluffs, and he's gone big as well. If he did have that set of jacks, set of aces, and we've done this weird kind of like call his bet and then check the river, he's if he did have something really strong here when there's no straight well, there's no obvious straight. You've got the 3 and 5, you know, but there's no flush, no obvious straight. He's not, you know, he's not worried about being beaten. He'd be wanting to get max value, and yeah, I suppose he's polarizing. Yeah, this is polarized now. This is a 3/4 bet. He's either got it or he don't, or he's got a missed draw, isn't he?
But what hands would you call a re-raise on the turn, considering the turn was a 4 which had diamond potential, but would you see that you'd call out with a diamond draw? Would you then need to bet so big?
I think maybe he thinks I've played a bad ace. You know, I've played not a bad ace, but you know, ace X, not quite as strong as ace queen, maybe like ace 7, ace 8. I think maybe he could think I've got a hand like that, or maybe even jack 10 I've played badly and started betting that when I shouldn't have, and he's got king high, something like that, you know, like one of these missed draws, and he's now trying to get not the strongest hands to fold. He probably knows that if I have got a good ace, I should probably call, but I've also got lots of other hands in my range that may well fold to such a big bet. So I think he's bluffing. It feels like he's bluffing, but who knows? He's either bluffing or he's got us crushed.
Yeah, just trying to run through the different kind of hands that got to this stage that you could be playing. Like, for instance, if you're calling, basically, let's say from a different perspective, if the villain's just got complete bluffs, let's just assume they've got no strong hands, they've got just complete bluffs. What ace X is going to call the re-raise on the turn that is now not going to call when a 9 of clubs comes? None. So they must expect any solid ace to call.
Yeah.
So are they hoping that it was in fact you getting to this stage with your king queen suited that's now missed? At which point does that then mean that they must have ace X? Or does that mean that they've got some other misdraw or complete rubbish, or a pair of 10s, pair of queens that now thinks they're a bit stronger? Why would, I mean, you just go for showdown value at that point.
Yeah, I think as well, like, if he is bluffing, his bet size is wrong, is what I'm thinking here. Like, if he truly wanted to get me off something pretty good, but that I'm not that confident about, like maybe ace X, I think he needed to jam. The pot was 2,200 odd. He'd have jammed and it would have put me all in for my last 2,500. It would have been just over a pot bet. I think it needed to be my tournament life to make this bluff work, because, you know, I'm sitting here thinking we've got to call this.
Yeah, I think I'm out leveling the opponent. I think I'm going too deep, and it is exactly what you said, where you'd either do a small bet because you've got a strong hand, and the last thing you want is to bet 3/4 pot and get no calls when you could bet a quarter pot and get a call.
Yeah.
Anyone knows that that's a big bet in this position is not going to get calls from rubbish hands. Let's just say you were playing wildly with jack 8. You're not going to call a 3/4 size pot bet, but you will call a quarter bet maybe.
Exactly. His sizing's wrong. But here's a question, because it sounds like we're going to agree that we've probably got to call this now, even though it's a little bit of a crying call. Would you call a jam here if the villain had put you all in on this river? Same hand, same situation, but he's jammed. This is now you kicked out with no payout. Does that change things? Does that change it to? I don't think it does. I think a jam is the same thing. It's either a bluff or it's the nuts, and it's just another crying call.
Yeah, I wouldn't make any change in how I play. The only thing I'm thinking at this point is, if you feel that you're ahead enough of the time, if you feel that you're beating most of the hands in his range because most of them are bluffs at this stage, or hands that he beat, I do feel that he'd be doing that with ace 10. I feel that there's a chance he could be doing it with ace eight even. Shouldn't it be? But I do feel that it's there. I feel that players do play. If they'll raise an ace two times the big blinds under the gun, any ace, any offsuit ace, and when they hit that, they'll go wild with it.
Yeah, that happens definitely.
So get value, you shove. So if you feel that they're the ones that are going to put that much chips in anyway, they're certainly going to call. So if someone's got this far with ace eight, ace seven, ace 10, even with kings and queens, I'd be very surprised if they then shoved for a 1,000 going into what would at that point be a 5,000-6,000 pot.
So you're saying that if he's doing this with like ace eight, that we should, if we feel like we could be ahead here, we should go for the extra value and get the last 1,000 in as well.
Yeah, if you feel like that he's doing this with a lot of bluffs, but he's also doing this with some weaker hands that you beat, then your equity is massive, because there's not very many hands that he'll do this with such a range of hands that you're already beating, that you might as well try to get the last of your stack in. You don't just call and think, well, the few times that you beat me, it's like, well, you're beating most of his range. Get his chips. Do the best you can to get the value. Maybe. If you feel that that's in. If you feel that it's more marginal than that, then it's just a call. There's no point risking additional chips for marginal calls. It's more if you feel that most of his in this position, a lot of his hands are bluffs anyway. And he's also doing it for value, but incorrectly, because he's not getting value because he's actually got worse hands. If you feel that he would be making this as a value move with certain ace X's that you're beating, then you get the rest of his chips as well. If you don't feel that if it is very polarized, it's either he's completely beating you or he's completely bluffing, then no, you just call.
Yeah, I think it's that one. I think it's polarized. And it's been crazy. It's been backwards and forwards with who's leading and whatnot. But I feel like at this stage, our hand is a calling hand, and because I feel like he's got more bluffs in his range. I don't necessarily agree that he'd be doing this with a hand that he's kind of, he wants to see showdown now. He's not certain he's ahead, like ace 8, ace 10, ace 7, ace 6. I don't think he's doing this bet with that, because would it be a bluff or would it be value? I don't think he would know. So giving him some credit for understanding that if he's got showdown value, he should probably just check behind. I would say he's not doing this with that many weaker aces. But then, no, that being said, he could be. Ace 10, ace 10, he might just be overplaying it. Yeah, it's difficult to say at this stake level, isn't it?
As much as the board started moderately wet, it's pretty dry. There's not, by the river, it's crap. There's very little. There's only a few 2 pairs that either of you are going to have. So ace high is kind of where you're playing. Now, I completely agree that I don't think the bet size is a value bet size, but that doesn't mean this isn't someone who doesn't understand value very well and is just excitedly thinking, well, you've shown weakness. I want to get all my chips in because I'm going to win this hand.
Because we've played it so weird that he's just thinking, my ace 8, I'm smashing it. I've still got my pair of aces. So you're but that's that. I find that line of thinking can really confuse me when I'm doing this hand reading, if I'm honest, because it's once you start thinking, they could have anything because they might just be playing like a dipshit. No offense to the hijack position there, but do you know what I mean? It's then it becomes very difficult. You've almost got to give them some credit just to make it a sane kind of hand reading.
It's more looking into things like the bet sizing, where we've tried to establish. It's only because of things like the bet sizing where we've tried to establish what are you doing that with in this position where you also re-raise the turn. Sorry, like the bet size doesn't make sense. If you want value, you go lower. If you want folds, go bigger. That isn't achieving either of them. You're not going to get value from the things you want value for, and there are hands that are going to call you that you didn't want to call, that you might not have called a shove.
Yeah.
So let's just say it's a complete bluff. I think an ace-8 calls that bet. I don't think an ace-8 would necessarily call a shove. Might probably will from a lot of players, but I don't think necessarily call a shove. So that tells me that they might be the type of player that overvalues an ace, because they've left themselves in this weird limbo position on the river where we don't know what they're trying to achieve, and they're not doing either of it very well. So your hand is both a bluff catcher and exceptionally high value.
Yeah.
My feeling at this point is that because I've got no investment in the hand, no monetary value for winning, I think a shove here to get maximum value is where I'm at. I think the ball doesn't. The only thing you're really worried about, given their action, is 2-pair, which they might have fluked. An ace-9 on the river.
Yeah.
Possibly the ace-4, but I'm going to go with ace-9, and that's very limited hands. I feel that your ace-queen is beating everything else. I'm not even sure about the ace-king.
Yeah.
At this point, I feel that they would have got extremely lively. Someone who overvalues an ace, triple overvalues the ace-king. So I feel there is extra value where they think they're betting the winning hand, trying to get value, and there's no value to be had. So they're 100% calling a shove in that position. Okay. Could be wrong, but I am aware that there are certain hands that you're going to lose that to, and all of a sudden you're out of the tournament. But I do feel that the way they're betting and the unusualness and the things that we can't settle on is because it's just as simple as they're overvaluing their ace.
Okay. No, I like that. So I think I would still check, just because I'm so unsure now. It's like, let's just see the showdown. But I get you thinking, definitely. All right then. So hero does call, and can we have a drum roll, please?
Ace queen shown. That's yours. And it's king queen. Misdraw.
Villain shows king queen offsuit as well. So he didn't even have the diamonds. The flush draw. He literally called the flop and then raised your turn bet, and then all but jammed the river with missed gut shot straight.
I mean, that's really comforting, because some of the decisions we spoke through, which we haven't really spoke through on real earlier podcasts, is about doing things like leaving their bluffs in. And this is exactly that. We did leave their bluffs in. We just checked on the river.
That check on the river earned us 1,500 chips there, as far as I'm concerned. If we'd have bet that, he could have folded that and saved himself a lot of chips, and he'd have still had over 3,000. He'd have been well in the, it'd have been like third chip stack, third biggest chip stack on a 6-handed table. He could have so easily folded that. So I think it was a great decision on the river, at least.
Yeah. If I had a solver, I would dot into it what the equity would be in the shove from you, the shove over the top, if there is any value, because you are going to get folds from the complete bluffs, and you are going to get, well, no, there'll be no value in a solver because it's all about the range we put them on, and we kind of disagreed on that. So the solver's not going to know any better than we do. You can't stick duff ranges into solvers and expect right answers. So it is just if they're the type of player who can get this far with king queen, which essentially was a gut shot for most of it, for the entire hand, what I'm saying. Are they the same player that would overvalue an ace and do the exact same move, but plus call the bet on the shove on the river, check raise? That's the one that I'm going for. Because I do feel that if we are a bit more confident that they're that type of player, then the check raise shove on the river is exceptionally high value, because they're calling that, even though they know they're probably beat at that point. They're the ones doing the crying call.
Yeah. Okay.
Love it.
Well, love it, mate. Thanks very much, Tain. That was another great hand. Lots to think about there. Lots of learnings on that one.
Yeah, I need to listen back through and work out. There's certain times that you pulled me up where I've kind of contradicted myself a little bit, and I need to basically pick a line and be a bit more confident in it. There's some things that I said this and then said something completely the opposite of that, and it's not that they're both wrong or one of them's right, one of them's wrong, but
No, but I think
you have to pick a line.
No, but that's part of our learning curve, isn't it? But well, look, just as we sign out, then, like as I say, if you've got any comments, listeners, please do leave a comment in the chat, and yeah, we'll see you next time.
Cheers, everyone. Take it easy. Thanks.
Bye.